watching Property TV.
Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. My name's Stephen Galpin and this is the programme where you can have your property related questions answered by our team of property experts. And welcome to Terry Everson, Director of Cornerstone Financial Services, FX Providers. Welcome to you, Terry. Good to have you back again.
Yep, and a belated New Year to you, Stephen.
Thank you very much indeed. And also via Zoom from Dubai, we have Alex Eady, Head of Short Stays for luxuryproperties.com in Dubai. Welcome to you, Alex.
Thank you, Stephen. Hello.
Your first time on Question Time, so we'll try and be gentle with you, don't worry.
Perfect. Yeah, please do.
Okay, well, we'll get right on with the questioning. And Alex, you're going first. So I understand that in recent years, like many other countries, Dubai has suffered a property recession. Has this now been overtaken by a strong recovery? And if so, does it apply to both the sales and letting market, as I'm interested in investing?
Yes, it's definitely recovered. I think it recovered probably a little bit faster than the rest of the world. I was in London at the time, and I know that it sort of struggled and dipped there, but it's so transient here that things do tend to move forward. There's constant demand in terms of sort of sales, and on the leasing side, everything seems to have recovered well. I think this year, Q1 of 2022 is potentially probably the strongest year that we're going to have in estate agency. It's very much a buyer's market here as well. So we're seeing a lot more investment put back into Dubai after a bit of a hiatus following obviously the recession, but even the pandemic last year. We seem to have recovered well and in all aspects of that.
Okay. I've been in property for about 35 years, maybe even a bit longer. And it's always a puzzle to me. I never know which is going to recover first, lettings or sales. I don't know which comes first.
I think here it seems to be both. I know sort of it's normally if sales is strong, letting isn't. But I think over here, I think it's generally the sales that kicks in initially, and leasing will follow almost immediately, 3 to 6 months latest afterwards. So I would say sales has probably got the front step on that.
Okay. Now, Alex, just for the benefit of our viewers, in terms of regulations when one is buying in Dubai, do you need to satisfy any particular conditions if you want to become a Dubai landlord? Or
I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know that side of things on the sales side.
Okay. All right, but it obviously seems to be a pretty sort of liberal economy nowadays. Certainly a lot easier than it used to be. So that will encourage the market in itself, won't it?
You know, there's sort of regulations and rules that prevented so many sort of expats, I guess, purchasing previously, whereas now they've sort of realised how much money it actually brings in to the country, and we're seeing a lot more, certainly sort of European buyers than we have done previously over the last 12 to 24 months.
Okay. And do you find that there's a strong UK interest in Dubai again now?
In terms of purchasing, I think there always has been on the investment side of things, but certainly in terms of level of people that are coming over from the UK as Dubai's developed and it's become more well known and a lot more westernized. It's definitely seeing a lot more tourism, sort of people holidaying, people actually buying over here for investment because they know that they're going to get a good sort of return of investment if they do.
Yeah, good. Okay, Alex, well, that's very helpful. I'm sure our viewer will be very happy with your answer there. Thank you very much indeed. So, Terry, on to your first question. I will shortly need to undertake a transfer of currency to France to purchase a property. With regards to fees and costs, it seems that I'll pay on 2 counts. 1, a fee for the amount of money transferred, and 2, possibly the risk of any exchange rate fluctuations. Am I correct in my assumption? And if so, are there any ways of limiting these costs?
Yes, there are. If you use payment services, FX broker, other than a bank, there are no charges involved at all. You get charge a standard bank charge of approximately £10 to make the transfer. And we typically make our money from the exchange rate. So
Okay.
we would offer a much better rate than the high street banks to save the client's money, but that's where we make our revenue in the exchange rate.
Okay. So there's no actual transfer fee itself then?
No fees at all.
Okay. Well, that's very helpful. And, you know, in today's, I suppose, difficult climates because of COVID, are you seeing a lot of currency fluctuations?
Yes, I mean, it's not like the old days pre-Euro where you'd get sort of up to 10% moves in a day. But, you know, if you look at the Euro recently, you know, we've had some days where it's traded at 118 and 120, where it currently is. I mean, that's, you know, quite a big move these days. But, you know, typically clients buying property abroad, they'll look at the rates now. They like the fact that you know, it's very strong against the euro, and they may want to take advantage at these levels.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, should one budget for an exchange rate fluctuation? Should one take that into the calculations when you're buying a property?
Yes, they should, because, you know, if a purchaser has got, say, £1 million to spend, you know, and they know the properties they're looking at are going to be a certain amount in euros, they may want to fix that in now, because if all of a sudden the market come off 10, 15%, it will impact on the level they can purchase. So, you know, they can fix this in.
Okay. And I think I'm going to ask you a question with Alex sitting there, who's obviously biased towards Dubai. Is there any difference in risk or in calculations from perhaps transferring money to what I would call a European country, you know, the popular areas where you'd buy property or historically buy property, you know, Italy, France, perhaps Spain, as opposed to transferring to a Middle East country like Dubai? Or
No, there's no further risk. As far as the UAE is concerned, it's on par with Europe, the US. It's only when you go to some of these exotic destinations that there's probably more risk.
Which exotic destinations are we talking about?
Sort of African countries, South American countries, which most people are not typically buying property there in the first place. So,
well, the economies there are pretty volatile anyway,
exactly.
aren't they, I suppose. So, and have you any advice for anybody budgeting for this? I mean, you've said very kindly you don't actually charge a fee for the transfer, but when you're budgeting this as part of your property purchase, what would you typically say to somebody? Well, look, why don't you make an allowance of so and so for fluctuations, for incidental costs, or anything else? Would you recommend putting something aside?
Well, no. Well, if a client wants to take advantage of the rate now, but they're not sort of buying till the future, the only cost they would have to budget for, they have to put up a deposit, which is typically 5%, which covers against any exchange risk if the rate goes lower than where they fixed it in.
Okay.
So that's the only thing they have to budget for.
And you put your 5% down. How long would it be possible to sort of fix a rate for?
We typically don't go further than 1 year forward. And if a client sort of fixed the rate in for 1 year forward, and they found the property after 4 months, they can do what's known as a drawdown and settle the trade earlier with no penalties.
Okay.
And the reverse way, if in a year's time they hadn't found the property, they can roll the transaction for another period at no cost.
Okay. Well, sounds totally reasonable. Yep. Well, what a good chap you are. Yep. Okay, well done.
We do our best.
So that's good. Doing much business in Dubai?
We've started to. We've recently opened an office in Dubai, which is aimed at people buying property in Dubai, which is quite interesting. A lot of high net worth Far Eastern investors are now previously bought in the UK, in London, and now looking at Dubai.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, as I said to Alex, I mean, we were all aware of the sort of recession that, well, I suppose that hit the world really, and Dubai in particular hit the headlines for quite a while. But as Alex said, it seems to be recovering very strongly now. And I always look at Dubai as a very exciting market. The architecture is always very exciting there, Alex. You must be very proud of some of your instructions, I'm sure.
Absolutely love them. Yeah, it's a sort of a completely different world, really. Can't quite believe it, but it's a fantastic place.
Can I just ask you to bear in mind we're sitting in London here on a very dull, cloudy day, talking to you with sunshine streaming through your windows, no doubt, but there we are.
It's a hot one today.
Okay, well, look, we're going to take a break. That's all we've got time for in this half of the show, so join me again after the break.
You are watching Property TV. You are watching Property TV.
Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin and I'm joined by Alex Eady and Terry Everson. Alex, your second question. I'm interested in investing in Dubai real estate. Could the panel give me an idea of the various forms of rental which would be open to me if I were to purchase, for example, a high-end penthouse apartment in one of the more prestigious tower blocks?
Okay. I mean, there's two sort of types of rental. I guess the most common one is your long-term rentals. So minimum here is annually, so 12 months. Generally exclusive of all bills and utilities. Similar to the UK, that will be the tenant's full responsibility. Yeah. On the short-term side of things, you're looking at anywhere from, for penthouses in the prime sort of luxury things, we'll do monthly, even weekly, and sometimes nightly. So yeah, sort of typical tenants could be anywhere from corporate tenants, so moving over to Dubai on relocation, needing short-term accommodation, or serviced apartments upon arrival until they secure somewhere permanent, or even people flying over on contract, so 3 or 6 month work placements. In addition to that, we get inquiries, a lot of inquiries through at the moment from people on staycations, or simply just want a luxury holiday stay for anywhere between a fortnight up to about a month. You obviously attract a higher premium on the short-term side of things. It's an all-inclusive package. The majority of the properties are completely turnkey as well, so it's a home-from-home experience. And ROIs are extremely high at the moment, so we're up to about sort of 15%. And certainly with Expo that's taking place currently, it's the highest Dubai's ever seen.
Sounds pretty strong. And I suppose then you're head of short stays, so that would probably lean towards more holiday lets and shorter term corporate lets, I suppose, for visiting execs.
Yes, that's right. So that's my sort of core market is the corporate term serviced accommodation and the holiday or vacation rentals.
Yeah, I mean, I think the difficulty, if you're comparing, say, Dubai with London, for instance, the rental market, obviously you'll realise here in a lot of the tower blocks that the sort of Airbnb kind of operation is not encouraged. It tends to be against planning regulations. It sounds like the opposite applies in Dubai to some extent. And I think in a lot of ways, I think that's good news for an investor, isn't it? I mean, if you're seeing such premiums on your short-term rentals, I know you've got the difficulty of, I suppose, a higher churn of tenants and therefore a little bit more extra work, but it sounds very healthy.
It definitely is. It's a case of, at the moment, demand is massively outweighing supply. Even with sort of various hotel chains, for example, as well, the prices have gone through the roof because they're at 99% occupancy. I actually worked in doing sort of a similar thing in London, and sort of just touching on your point, I know exactly what you mean. All of a sudden, in head leases, it started to appear no lets under 6 months and no subletting, and it did kind of kill the market over there a little bit, but it is a lot more encouraged over here.
Yes. Yeah, well, as I said, I think you're in a very exciting market there. Not only exciting from the point of view of just cash returns, but the thrill of owning such sort of exotic property, I suppose, is.
Yes, indeed, it's very different to London. You've got anywhere from beachfront villas with their own pool and beach to, as you mentioned earlier, sort of 2-3 bed penthouses with their own private plunge pool overlooking the beach. So it's a completely different world, and I think that's what attracts so many people to come and visit or to come and invest in Dubai.
Yes, and of course the flights are regular and reliable and very high quality too, aren't they? So it's a pleasant experience all around.
And affordable as well.
Yeah. Okay, great. Alex, thank you very much for that. Terry, your second question. Right, now then, when selecting an FX agent, What sort of qualifications or licensing should I look for to make sure that my money is secure and safe? Whoa.
Compliance question. Payment services is a regulated activity in the UK. So the first thing to check the company that you're dealing with is, I would advise you go on the FCA register, that's the Financial Conduct Authority, and check that the company has the correct licenses. That's the first thing to do. Never deal with a company that's not authorised. So that's the most important thing.
Okay, so now when the FCA register a company, what exactly are they registering and regulating? Is it just the ability to be able to hold a deposit, or does it give the client some kind of comfort for the entirety of the transaction, or how does it work?
Yeah, it gives the client comfort that the company has been through all the stringent tests of the FCA to get authorised. The company obviously has to have the correct bank accounts to process the transactions. One of the requirements as well is customer safeguarding accounts, which means any funds you're holding for the client ahead of settling the trade has to go into the safeguarding account.
Right, so that's like a ring-fenced account,
It's
which
totally ring-fenced.
can't be used for anything else.
Can't be used for client own funds or anything. And if the FX broker went into administration for any reason, those funds are protected.
Okay, so they'll be even protected from a receiver, for instance?
Correct, yes.
Well, that's quite comforting, isn't it? And so the extent of that regulation, does that apply to the very end of the transaction?
Yes, it does.
So and the end of the transaction would be when it hits the chosen bank?
When it's a chosen bank account, whether it's for a solicitor's account or the client's direct account, that's the end of the transaction.
Yes, I know. I'm just thinking back to sort of your lectures on the legal training and things, and they always say to you, you've got to identify what's the end of the transaction, haven't you?
Yeah.
And so it's hitting the recipient account, I suppose. That's
It is
the easy way of putting it. Okay, I must say that the FX market seems very buoyant and very strong at the moment, perhaps because of the fee structure you suggested earlier. It's huge savings on what the banks used to charge.
Big savings. Well, I mean, although it's a different market, if you look at the variance in exchange rates on, say, bureau de change, it's quite staggering. So sort of banks on these property transactions, although they're not as wide as that, they're still quite big markups compared to the FX brokers.
Okay. And so if I was looking, as our questioner is obviously doing, looking on the internet, trying to find my FX agent, you suggested that number one, that they've got to look for FCA accreditation. Correct. Anything else they ought to be looking for? Any warning signs they ought to be looking for?
No, because when you go on the FCA register, it will give you a lot of information about the company you're dealing with, who the key personnel are, what their licenses allow them to do. If there's any previous black marks, they'll be up there on the register. Right. And also, a lot of prospective buyers go on comparison websites.
Yeah.
So they can clearly see a list of companies on there that offer the service, and they would all need to be regulated to go onto that site.
Right. And does that regulation get checked every 12 months or?
Yeah, it's regularly monitored. You have to have an annual AML audit as well.
Anti-money
laundering audit.
Yes.
The FCA.
I've done the course.
You've done the course.
So I know exactly how to do it now.
Yeah. And you have safeguarding audits to make sure that all your controls are in place for client safeguarding. So it's an ongoing process.
Okay, good. Well, that sounds very straightforward, and a lot more straightforward than I think it used to be.
Yep.
I think, we used to hand money over to banks, and it sort of used to disappear, surrounded by a load of fees and complications. So, just a last point on that. Have you found any difficulties or sensitivities since we've experienced Brexit? Has it changed at all?
No changes at all from my experience.
There's no difficulties with the interaction of banks. I can't remember, what was it, passporting or whatever?
Yeah, passporting. Yeah. No changes, no issues whatsoever.
Okay. All right, well, on that note, I'm going to say thank you very much. So that's all we've got time for today. So I'm going to say a big thank you to Terry Everson and Alex Eady. Thank you both very much for your answers, both very helpful. I'm going to look forward to seeing you both again in the future, and join me again next time on Property Question Time.